Yeah. Hi, Tola.
Hi, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Tired, but
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, wow. Sorry. Life of a tech bro.
Mhm.
Thank you for taking our time to join us on our webinar. We really appreciate your time. We know you're a very busy CEO.
Thank you.
So whereabouts are you now? Are you in Lagos or are you
I'm not in I'm not in Lagos.
okay? Where are
I'm
you?
not currently in Lagos. I'm in New York.
Raw. What's happening in New York?
Um, Business actually.
That's
Came out to meet some of our investors. Yeah,
Wow, that sounds amazing. Well done.
thank you.
Amazing journey. So a bit of background. I actually know Tola in real life. So yeah, I'm friends with him. He's a tech bro. He's doing amazing things. And yeah.
What does
So
a tech bro mean?
a tech bro
Because I
is
work in tech.
someone that,
I
that
work in
has
tech.
potential to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next Elon Musk. So yeah, you are a tech bro.
That's a lot, but okay. I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, cool. So a bit of background. Tola Adesanmi is the co-founder and CEO of Spleet Africa. I remember when the startup actually launched. You guys were doing like sort of an Airbnb or sorry monthly rent business model for landlords, connecting landlords to monthly renters, and I thought it was really interesting because nobody was doing that at that time. And yeah, it's quite interesting. So tell us how your journey has been, how you got here.
Um, yeah, so I mean, when you met us, we're still at the beginning of this. Um, we really just set out to solve a problem that we had, right? Yeah,
Amazing.
we came back from, I'd worked in corporate Nigeria for a bit. My co-founder came back from the UK, and I think it was just a bit absurd to us to find out that you had to pay your rent, 1 to 2 years in advance. Lagos State, a couple of years ago, under Babatunde Fashola, changed it to 1 year. But like some other parts of the country, you still pay your rent 2 years in advance. Um, and we found that this was the case in some other African countries, like 2 years standard. And it didn't make sense because most of the people you find in our demographic um, earn their money monthly. Like most people earn their salaries monthly, or
Yeah.
even entrepreneurs, even though they have staggered income, it doesn't come as much as to fulfill 1 year's rent. So my family business, you know, is real estate as well.
Okay.
So we sort of own a real estate company that does like retail acquisitions and management, that my grandfather started. And I was I was exposed to that business. My co-founder had worked in real estate, still does. So we decided that we're going to solve this problem. And when you met us initially, what we had done was we had built a marketplace to connect landlords in our network to, and convince them that, we would do all the underlying credit worthiness and, rent collection and, eviction and all of that, put all the legal processes in place so that they they could collect monthly rent, right?
Okay.
Um, was in the beginning convincing landlords in our network wasn't difficult, right? Because there was trust. And then tenants just flooded the platform and they were renting their homes once a month. So yeah, we bootstrapped that for about 15 months, but we started to notice that we had more tenants than landlords, right? Um, we were exhausting our network, especially as exact, you know. So we started to think around other like ways to solve this problem because now it looked more like a tenant problem. Landlords didn't really mind. So if you look at some of the problems in the market or the whys of why we pay rent in that way in the first place, landlords are de-risking themselves 2 years or 1 year at a time. We don't have very sensible mortgage systems in Nigeria. The infrastructure doesn't really exist. And it's not really the bank's fault, right? Like if you look at inflation, inflation is probably at 12 point something percent. Interest rates are at 30, right? And paying like 30% for on a mortgage in about 4 to 5 years, you're probably paying double the capital. Um, so it doesn't really make sense to take a mortgage. So most homes that you see in Nigeria are paid down for, which is why
Yes.
landlords de-risk themselves that far. So it's really a tenant problem. So we started thinking, I mean, we raised the family and friends, angel round in 2019.
Okay.
Um,
And did
conti-
that do very well?
yeah, it was for a family and friends round at the time, it was big. It was 260K. Um,
Wow.
you know, but understand that my founder and I had domain knowledge. We had bootstrapped it, and we were already generating revenue even before the family and friends round. So yeah, so a bunch of investors were willing to jump on board. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, so we did that, and then COVID hit in 2020, right? So
How did that affect you guys? Was it like a good or bad thing? Was it good for you?
it was bad because we couldn't grow, right? You remember there was a time, because we were still running the marketplace, part of our business was still physical in the sense that because of the low trust environment Nigeria is, you still have
Yes.
to meet with, most of these landlords were still in our network. The convincing was really like a sales strategy. We're still onboarding these guys. Things were not automated. And if you look at the demographic of people that actually own homes in Nigeria, they're old, right? They're not very
Yeah,
tech savvy. They're not gonna,
they're older generation.
yeah. So
But how
it's
do you
either
convince those people that you can go to a website and put their property and somebody would pay
at the
their rent?
time we hadn't, right? At the time we hadn't. I mean, we're already switching our sales strategy to B2B. So more corporate landlords that had multiple units or were
Oh,
managing multiple units on behalf of like investors, right? But
okay.
we still, there was still the individual landlord we wanted to go out to. So we weren't onboarding homes, but we weren't losing tenants. So like 2020 was essentially like a flat year, right?
Wow.
We didn't go out of business, right? But we couldn't grow business, right? If you remember, 2020 until the end of 2020 was really a stay alive. Like
Yeah,
we were in
it was
business,
survival
just
mode for everybody.
yeah,
Everyone everywhere.
yeah. So 2021 came. We had already started thinking about rent financing because we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to really solve this problem for our over 65,000 tenant wait list, right? Um,
5,000.
yeah,
Jesus. That
yeah,
is wow.
yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
You say that, but it becomes a problem for us
Yeah.
if we can't actively solve this problem, right? And at the time, they were actually active waiters, right? Because we would see like almost like 20% return every month of this
Yeah.
wait list. Like, I need a home. I'm looking for a home. I'm
Yeah.
looking for something
Yeah.
either in
I
my
actually remember speaking to you one time. I wanted to get a place for just a month. Because I needed to be out of my family house at that time. And you just point blank told me, like, Tolani, if you don't get it today or this week, it's gonna be
it's
gone.
gone.
And I thought you were just saying that. And then I checked the next day, it was actually gone. Like the apartment
Yeah.
was gone. And I was like, like so
Yeah. Yeah, because once it's affordable, like I'm sure what I did was send you links of stuff in your price range. Once it's affordable, it goes, right? Like
yeah,
what we probably have on the marketplace isn't really fitting our tenants, price
need.
range,
Uh,
that's what's left. But most of the better affordable ones are gone, right? So we started rethinking the rent financing in 2021. We got into and then we got into an accelerator program, and we
amazing,
got backed by Metaprop. So we raised a pre-seed last year, which we announced early this year.
amazing.
Um, and just sort of learned how we could like build this financing, product for our target market because
Okay.
it's very specific, like it's niche, right? It's really focused on like financing your rent. So we needed to think around um collections, what the profile of the tenants would look like, how do we, protect our own, you know, this,
So you're
ca-
saying that the business has evolved at this point
yeah. So now we
completely
still have the marketplace.
that
We still have the
marketplace.
marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what we're seeing growing is our rent financing. We call it rent now, pay later, right?
But
So
what's the rent financing? What does that exactly entail?
it's really the same thing except for the fact that we now are not burdened with finding the home for you, right? Some people because and it was really data driven. Like people were coming to us and saying, "Hey, I found a home. Please just help me pay my rent to my landlord so that I can pay you guys monthly, right?"
Wow. So that's a
Uh,
huge difference.
so it's like, okay,
You pay the rent, like sorry, Split pays the rent for the entire year or 2 years, and
one
then
year
1 year, and then you then take the monthly rent from the
payment,
tenant.
but the
And
tenant
then
will be
obviously
paying
with your
at
data, you
least
can
an
pick the
equity
right
cut.
tenant as well. That
Yeah,
is
so
amazing. That's
the,
such an amazing pivot. And I think that makes the solution more unique to Africa,
yes, to our market.
honestly.
So to
Yeah.
Nigeria, Ghana, French-speaking Africa, where people still pay rent 2 years in
Oh,
advance.
are you French speaking now?
No, really, 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 and truly, we're still only in Nigeria. The Nigerian market is huge, right? We've not scratched the surface. We
Amazing.
speak to our competition, continuously. We both have not, like, at least our major competitor, we've not scratched the surface at all. Like,
Wow.
we're not meeting the demand.
So are you encouraging more people to get into prop tech, like this side of prop tech where you are, or don't do it, it's very hard.
Um, I don't think I would encourage anybody to be like going into high growth startup, building a high growth startup. I
Why?
because it's hard. It's extremely hard. Like,
Mm, I
why
agree.
would I encourage anybody to do anything that's hard?
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense. There's a lot of glamour, around it,
Attached to it.
but
But then when people hear things like, okay, you raised 600K pre-seed, dude, come on, like that's like, wow, these people are making are raising this kind of money, hence they can, 10x this kind of money. So therefore equals to I should get in this game as well. Everybody that I mean, coming from a consulting perspective as a consultant, everyone I'm speaking to is trying to get into the startup game. Do you
mm,
understand? So
and then
so you saying this is so disheartening, Tala.
no. I'm not even trying to like I because I'm not going to like mince words with anyone, right?
Yeah.
It's for instance, if you're fundraising right now, it's a no-go, right? The markets are really down, right?
Mm,
Um, it's you have to deliver numbers as well, right? You
yeah.
can't just fundraising. People don't understand the things that are happening underneath, like the water, right? All you see is a fundraising announcement. You don't know that. I mean, we all know that equity has been let go of,
Yeah.
right? You don't know how much, right? We all know that it's probably taking about 6 to 7 months for that round to be completed, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I've heard of some people leaving their round open for, up to a year.
yeah, because it's hard.
It's hard
It's
raising money.
hard, right? Like, I'll give you statistics. In our pre-seed round, we spoke to 98 investors,
Wow.
right? Yeah,
Well,
so
to be honest, I have heard of, people speaking to up to 100 investors. I think was it Bamboo that they mentioned that they spoke to 100 investors.
100
And I was
plus.
like that's a
That's
lot.
that. It's a
That's a lot of
lot,
information.
and it's a lot of no's. So understand that it's also a lot of no. We're not going to do this, right? And
Wow.
it's a lot. There's also a lot of time wasting. There's a lot of due diligence that's being done and still ends up in no. There's a lot of things that are not glamorous, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
So
the real work is in glamorous, definitely.
yeah, the real work isn't glamorous. So I won't. I definitely won't like. It's not something I would encourage anybody to do, right?
I
You
get you.
know,
Based on your experience, what would you say are the unspoken rules of startup fundraising?
unspoken rules. Well, I don't know what the spoken rules are to start with, right?
Well, the spoken rules, I could just do a bit of background. We had a guest about 2 weeks ago
Okay.
that is in that VC space. And the spoken rules are it would be great if you went to an Ivy League school. It would be great if you've already founded a successful startup before in the past.
Mm.
And you had a lot of track record that could show that you are a very super good bankable founder. And it would be great if you work for, maybe a FANG company like Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, whatever. And those are the unspoken rules for American VCs. But now in the Nigerian context, it would be great if, maybe you came from Mandela, or, Paystack, or Florida Wave, or maybe even Opay. And it would be great if you have an international education. You also be great if you had experience as an entrepreneur, that that could show that you have good track record. So those are the spoken rules that
Okay.
kind of out there. So
Okay.
what are the unspoken ones that nobody's talking about?
Um, so personally, like, I'm not really a fan of these spoken rules because they're not hard and fast rules, right? But
Yeah.
I understand that those biases exist,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
I wouldn't say that um they don't exist. I won't say maybe I'm not privileged as well to have some sort of network, especially like in the friends and family round, right? But you start to get to a stage where traction really matters, right?
Yes.
Um, um, and once you get to that stage, it's really kind of, have you done anything to build anything, right? What risk have you taken on yourself, right? Um, done a bit of angel investing myself.
Okay.
Um, and for me, it's like I invest to learn. I don't invest to I don't invest to
You don't
like
invest to make money.
I mean, if the upside does happen, then I'm happy, Of course I will be excited, right? But I'm investing from thinking about how hard it is, right, for founders to get in and see if I can open up all these founders to my own network, right?
Okay.
Sometimes when you're doing that, those investors want to say, have you taken a risk on this founder too? Do you understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You know, so those kind of things are like are really really like. But when I'm doing that, it's really what risk have you taken on yourself?
Hmm.
You see, the thing is that again, when my first investor asked me that question, right? We had bootstrap for 15 months, right? That was I could answer that question very easily, right? I know he has a reputation for asking that question. There are two things he has a reputation for saying. Before he invests in you, he would say things like, um, what risk have you taken on yourself? After he invests in you, he will say that he will say to you what's your burn rate, because that's also important, right?
Okay.
But it's what risk have you taken on yourself? Like most founders think that most people that want to get into startup, think that you just come in and you just raise some money, and then they get in and they see how difficult it is, right?
Yeah.
People want to take risk on people that have taken risk on themselves, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So what would qualify as risk in this context?
Have you put any of your money into the business?
Oh, okay,
What
clearly.
what time have you put and what have you built?
Okay, so yeah,
What
you
is
you guys bootstrap for
15 months,
15
right?
months,
Like, yeah,
a year and a quarter. Wow.
yeah. So
With
it's
zero investment at that point.
yeah, like I mean, by month 9, we had like a convertible note, right?
Okay.
You know, because we're already generating revenue, and then it was like, okay, we need to pay ourselves something. We're full time doing this. We went 9 months without paying ourselves a dime.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know,
Those are the untold sacrifices.
yeah. So if you're depending on a fundraise to build a business, that's actually the reverse. You know,
Yeah.
cash should be like fuel. There's fire, but if
Yeah.
I'm putting fuel on it to,
You feel
that's
like
how it should be,
blood
as opposed
essentials.
to there's no fire, so it should be the match. No, it
Mm.
really shouldn't be. I know, like last year, there was a lot of investing in a lot of random things that didn't make sense, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and there was just a lot of cash. But the reality is, the market is it's
Down
sort of
right now.
is regulating itself, I would say.
It's regulating
So
itself, or a lot of people are saying the bubble is busting, like the VC bubble is busting, and all that throwing money at different things that don't really make sense. It's not gonna happen anymore.
I think it's a cycle, right?
Okay.
Um, It happened in 2008. Some of the best companies. we have today were built in 2008 or started
Okay.
around that time, like Airbnb, those companies were started around that time. Um, I don't think there's really a bubble. They're just investors. They're just people that don't know what they're doing, and they're people that know what they're doing. Period. Right? Like that's just it. There are people betting on
Yeah.
things that don't make sense, and who are we to say that they don't make sense, right? It's just a matter of perspective or how people see the future. That's
Mm-hmm.
really hard. Like if I had a fund, that would be my thesis for investing, right? What is my Does this founder look at the future the way I see the future, right? Like for us, like it sounds very simple. You just want to change the way Africans rent. Simple. Like access to a home should just be paycheck to paycheck. Like you should be
Yeah.
able to afford that paycheck to
Simple
paycheck.
problem, simple solution.
Yeah, and we find that now that we built this, more women can rent in Nigeria, right? We
Oh
know
wow, yeah,
this. Like
that's
most
actually
mentioning
very
this.
true. I've heard that a lot in Lagos when my female friends are trying to get a place and
Yeah,
they get asked all sorts of questions and they have to bring a guy to show that
that their
all is well and
husbands
dandy.
or they're engaged or things like that, right? Yeah, so those
Wow.
biases don't exist now. Those biases are now more objective than subjective. They don't matter, because we're doing all that credit assessment process today. Can
Okay.
you afford to live in this home or can you afford this rent is really what matters, not
Yeah.
you're a woman and or things like that.
Yeah. That's
So
amazing. Well done.
yeah, I
So
mean,
we have a question that was sent in earlier. Straight to the point. How do you successfully approach and get investors? First thing I want to say is I've noticed over the course of this conversation that you've mentioned like three different things that have sort of helped you raise. You had a convertible note, you had family and friends round, you also got into an accelerator. So would you say those things really, really helped when you were doing your pre-seed fundraising?
hmm, um good question. Question would be, how did I raise family and friends around in the first place? Again, we are taking a bet on ourselves and we have built the business, right? We just need a few. That's one. Two, I think it's really like a chicken and egg thing, right? If you build a business, people would come. But
Mm,
I won't say that's a hard and fast rule. I would say that works all the time. Like you still need to build a network, right? So if you see most of the founders that probably successfully fundraise, I don't know why I don't look at it as a metric for anything really fundraising, but it's just a metric to stay alive for another 24 months. Really, that's really what fundraising is, you know.
hmm.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Very
It's not.
different point of view.
Yeah. For the founder, it grows you as a founder in terms of like network and how you're able to like convince people to dream with you.
Yeah,
But technically, it's just the ability to get yourself to stay alive for the next 12 months to prove another point till the next fundraise or till you're
next
profitable,
fundraise.
right? I would say like for me, very sometimes I'm random about it. Some things fall in my lap. I've had investors that, you know, will just invest because their friend invested, or would invest because, like there was FOMO, right?
Fear of
Um,
missing out.
yeah. But I
Really?
would say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Investors they're not gods, you
They're
know.
humans at the end of
They're
the day.
what they're selling is capital. You are a
Okay.
customer, and what they're selling is capital, right? They just want to know that there's a customer product fit here, right? That's all. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
I think for us, it's just we have like a track. We look for investors that fit us. Tough for us because we're not. I mean, we're financial services, but like people label us prop tech, right? So how many prop tech investors? Like we had to open the door for so many things, right? I'll give you an example. Like we got into this accelerator program, MetaProp, and they let our pre-seed, but like all of that conversation happened on Twitter or started on Twitter, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So
So
does that mean building public helps?
we
But
weren't.
all your accounts are locked.
Yes, all my accounts are locked. I'm a very private
So
person.
how does that how did that work for you?
So this was what happened. Paystack exited, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, a bunch of people just started looking at Africa, right?
Lots of fear of
And
missing out.
yeah, and if you look at any sensible economy, Latin America, even America, right? Once the fintech boom starts, right? Once you start seeing some success in fintech, the next thing actually is prop tech, really. Prop tech or health tech. Health tech because it's now what's the you know how are people's lives in that
Mm,
economy, and prop tech is how do people live, right? Literally. So let me use America. When we had like the PayPal's and co, then Airbnb came, right?
yeah.
Latin America, same thing, right? So you find a lot of billion-dollar prop tech companies in Latin America. So between
Wow.
us and a few of our competition, like prop tech is just starting off. So it's sort of difficult being like a pioneer. It's hard because like you're having to do a lot of convincing beyond like unlike a fintech person, it's like, okay, this company, is
Yeah.
fintech is very straightforward. Um,
Is it?
if you're
I
building
feel, I
something.
feel like prop tech is more straightforward. I mean, being that they're tangibles, like you have physical products that you're selling, but fintech is more, there's a lot of regulations and restrictions and so on
Yeah,
and
there's a
so
lot of
forth.
that, but there's a lot of upside, right? Like the scaling is faster or can be faster, especially if it's like infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
You really don't, you're helping people, for instance, like in the case of some companies where you are helping to digitize cash, right? So you
Yeah.
are removing the physical aspect of it, so scaling happens faster. In when we were still doing things like finding a home, it was difficult because we needed to do the physical stuff. So when we couldn't be physical, business stalled. So scaling was harder, right? Which is
Mm,
why the financing makes sense because then we don't need to like do any physical things, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like all of that is digitized. Um, yeah, so I mean the process is reaching out to investors and just like being everywhere you feel like investors will. What I say to
but where
founders
is
is like,
everywhere you feel like investors would be? Okay, you've mentioned Twitter now. That's a really good one.
yeah, Twitter, like Zach, I didn't finish that story. So general partner at Metaprop, he just made a statement and he was like, the first thing that happens after a fintech boom is prop tech. What are the prop tech companies that are building in Nigeria, right? And you just see a
Wow.
bunch of people like tag
Tagging Spleet.
Spleet, and that was
Oh
like
wow.
so. And what was funny is like in 2019 we had already applied to the accelerator, but we were declined because they weren't investing in Africa, right? So
Wow.
like I always say, like some founders always say, I'm meeting a lot of investors that are not investing in Africa. And I always say to them, like, you could be the first one, right? Why don't you be that reason why they would invest in Africa? So I feel like for us, like we're the reason why they invested in Africa. And then they invested in Estate Intel, another prop tech company,
Yes, that's what I didn't tell.
and they're looking to double down, right? So yeah, that was I mean, for our
Just right place, right time. You've put in all the work. You've been working all these months. You've been
yeah,
doing
because
everything that you
but you
needed to
have to be
do,
ready, right? Like
and then the opportunity just came and
yeah,
boom.
yeah, luck is really like opportunity meeting readiness, right?
Yeah.
Really, like we're ready to fundraise. We're already fundraising. They actually, as the lead, they came at the end, right? If you we had gotten a few African founders that I mean, early stage firms that had invested in us
Yeah. Early
just
stage
because of track
VCs.
record, and things like that. But they came in at the end and they were like, okay, there's track record here, like, and these are investors we probably want to invest alongside of. We'll do the deal. Um, but meeting investors, I think is just talking about what you're building, right? And conviction that you actually believe that what you're building makes sense. I
Mm.
talk to everybody about it. Like my friends used
Wow.
to say at a point in my life that I didn't talk about anything apart from work, right? But you talk about
You
it
can
and then somebody
testify
to
to that.
you can't
I
testify
can
to that.
remember like meeting you at three social places, and all you could talk about was split, split, split. And it was infectious because I was so like. I was like, this is such an amazing idea. And
Yeah.
I actually remember seeing your picture. Your picture is one of the best done pitch decks I've ever seen. And I think
Wow.
you kept redoing it because you do it. You send me another version. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Thanks. Thanks.
as in, I was so convinced. First time I met you, just talked about it. Next time I saw you, you're talking about it, but it's grown more. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
go for it. And it worked. Everything worked out perfectly.
I hope so.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
I hope so.
I
Uh,
think it did.
well, I hope
Um,
so. You really can't say till that exit or something happens, right?
Um,
So you're still in the race.
I think you're positioned to have a really good exit already. I mean, if this is your precede, you why are you smiling like that?
I mean,
This
it's
is your
interesting.
precede.
Companies
I
die at
think
Series
that,
B.
the next round will be, way better. You're making a lot of noise. It's the sky is the limit essentially.
Amen. I will say amen to that. I will not. I would
Amen.
not say anything besides amen.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so to round out, what advice do you have for new or aspiring startup founders?
Um. I think for me, it's like keep building, keep talking
Mm,
about what you're building everywhere. Like it doesn't matter where you are, because as you said, like what you do is you infect people with, your vision, right?
yes.
And they might not, they might not think that it's necessary to know, but then they meet somebody else that needs to know that. You know, it,
Yeah.
you know, news travels fast, and
It does.
I would say like fundraising is not the all and be all. Like you first need to always decide if you want to build a fast growing company, right? It never looks fast in the beginning, but like you need to know what it takes to build a fast growing company before you go out and say you're fundraising.
Mm,
Um, I think my final thing will be like take a risk on yourself first. My thesis for investing might not be everybody's thesis for investing, to be honest, but I think it always pays to take risk on yourself because that's what makes you convince yourself. If you're not convinced, you can't convince anybody. Honestly, like people would find that out, and it's tough enough. So you can't, complicate it with not being convinced, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah. Thank you so
Amazing.
much, Talani.
Thank you so much, Tola, for your time. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, we've
Have a
come
good
to
one.
the end.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.